I got it.
And Swati, it appears that it's live on YouTube. So
It's okay.
Just watch your language, because I know you can get a little salty.
I don't think I get salty, so that's okay.
I don't think you do. Hi, Beth.
Yeah.
Where are you?
I'm at home. Not leaving for the Capitol until, I don't know, after this. We gavel in at 1, so it takes me about 40. Yeah, it takes me about 45 minutes to get there. So, yep, I'm at home.
Yeah.
Why don't you introduce yourself while we're waiting?
Yes.
We'd love to hear from you, our hostess.
Oh, hi, my name is Eliana. It's nice to meet you.
Why don't you introduce yourself while we're waiting?
Yeah.
We'd love to hear from you, our hostess.
I am Eliana. I am a senior in hospitality. Oh, hi, my name is Eliana. It's nice to meet you.
Why don't you introduce yourself while we're...
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, we are getting echo.
I'm afraid to say anything.
I had my YouTube on, sorry.
So Eliana, is that right?
Yes, it is. Yes, and I know all about all of you fabulous women, so.
Well, tell us about yourself. Where are you from?
Oh, it's actually 11 a.m., so do you want to start? Awesome. Okay, awesome. Hi, folks, and good morning. My name is Eliana Crabb. I am the co-organizer of the 2021's Women Week and also the Director of Outreach for Student Government here at Iowa State. It is my pleasure to welcome you this morning. We would like to begin this event with a land acknowledgement. Iowa State University is located on the ancestral lands and territory of the Bako or Iowa Nation. The United States obtained the land from the Meskwaki and Sauk nations in the Treaty of 1842. We wish to recognize our obligations to this land and to the people who take care of it, as well as the 17,000 Native people who live in Iowa today. I want to take this time to thank the panelists for being here today. We really appreciate it. And we will start off with introductions. After I say your name, please state your involvement in politics and also your introduction. So I'm going to start off with Swati Dandekar.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Swati Dandekar, and thank you very much to ISU for inviting me with great women like Jackie and Beth to be part of this experience. I have known Beth and Jackie for a long, long time. We don't want to date ourselves. But we have been sisters in good times and bad times. And so I'm very honored to be part of this panel, and we will talk about what we faced, our positives and negatives today in the next 55 minutes. So.
Awesome. Beth Wessel-Koshel, please.
Hi, thanks for having me. So happy that you are doing a Women's Week to celebrate what women have given and our struggles and accomplishments. I think those are all really important things to do for looking at our future and what's coming. I am serving my 9th term, is it, in the Iowa legislature, the Iowa House of Representatives. This is my 17th year, so whatever that means in terms of 2-year terms. I have been representing Iowa State University students and faculty and staff as a representative from Ames for all those years. And what else did you want me to add in this?
That is totally good. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Awesome. And then last, Jackie Norris.
Hi, I'm Jackie Norris, and I just have to say, I'm so excited. The future is so bright between Anna Olson and Eliana and the organization. You are masters of planning and organization, and I just am thrilled to be a part of it. I guess I'll use the title right now, community leader. I have an announcement that I'll be making in a couple of weeks about what I'm doing next. But in the meantime, I think most people know me and my background as being the former chief of staff at the White House for Michelle Obama. I've done lots of other things too in politics. And the thing that I never want to forget that people sometimes leave out is that I was a high school government teacher for 5 years, and probably one of my most favorite jobs as well. So that's just a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thank you all so much. You are all such wonderful women. And if we're going to go into our questions. Please try to keep your answers brief so that other panelists may answer. But our first question is, why did you choose the field in which you did?
Beth, you're on mute. I'll go. Well, mine's kind of a funny story. Actually, I don't know, Eliana, tell us what order you want us to go in, but I was attending university. I was in my end of my second year. I was an elementary education major, and foreshadowing my passion for education. And I called my dad, who was a public school teacher of 30 years, and said, I can't take the pressure of raising and helping raise these young children. It's too much pressure. And my dad said, oh, come on, this is, okay, if you want to pivot careers, do what you love. You love to stand up for yourself. You love to stand up for others. You love to advocate. Go be a political science major. And honestly, best decision I made. And so for me, it started in college, and then just found its way through internships and things that we'll talk about a little bit later.
I can say for me, it took all different kinds of directions. I started off teaching high school English, got a degree from the University of Northern Iowa. I left that and came to Iowa State University to get a master's in public administration, which of course is very much related to what I do now. After getting that degree, I worked for quite a few different nonprofits. I worked for an ag group, a human services group, and I got lots of different kinds of input on different issues. And then I was asked to run for office. So kind of, you just get your hands into all different kinds of things, which actually is probably good for somebody who's representing at the legislative level, because we deal with many, many issues.
So mine is a little bit different. I never thought that I will be in politics in the United States. I have a science degree, and I got married to my love of my life and followed him to Iowa, and that was the best thing that could happen to me. In those days, we didn't have daycare. So as a scientist, I decided to stay home, because even in those days, women were paid less than men. And I thought Arvin was making more money than I am. So it's better that I stay home and raise our son Ajay. At that time I had one. But one of the questions my husband asked me, so what are you going to do? And I said, don't worry, I'll find something to do. And I followed my heart and my passion, and that is education and women's equality. I have always, to me, that was always very important. And I started doing volunteer work in Linn-Mar school districts. That's where my two boys went to school. And I made sure that I was tutoring students in sciences, that's chemistry, biology, and zoology. But I also taught the younger kids math and English. And I think that was the best thing that could happen, because I'll tell you one small story. There was this bright little boy in second grade who did not get perfect on his spelling, and he went home and blamed it on me and said it was Dandekar's fault because she didn't pronounce the word right. And then I asked him, so how do I pronounce it? So he became my teacher, how to pronounce it the American way. He said, Mrs. Dandekar, you pronounce so much in British way. I get confused. So, it was a beginning, and this made it. I never thought that I will be first Indian American woman to be elected to any office in the United States. So, the journey is different, but like I said, I'm so glad I came to Iowa. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for those answers and responses. Next one is, did you always want to go into politics, and when did you realize this passion?
I can start. I am going to tell you probably not. I volunteered on campaigns as far back as 1972. So now I am aging myself. I remember walking down to Democratic headquarters from my family home in Ames and stuffing envelopes, which was a huge thing. And everybody who's been involved in politics has done that. But I will also tell you that I was an extraordinarily shy young person, and speaking publicly never, ever, ever occurred to me that I would do anything like that. There's Ruth Ann. It's good to have her on. So probably not always. What I found out was, and this was in 1992, I coordinated the Story County ERA campaign to add the ERA to the Iowa Constitution. We won in Story County, but the ERA lost. And while I was going, I had lots of speaking opportunities, which, just terrified me because I was a horrible public speaker. Didn't like it at all. But what I found was when I had something that I was interested in talking about, that I had a passion about, it all went away and I didn't mind doing it. So I became able to express my passion as well as be a part of it. So that's probably when it all began for me.
I think that's actually a great point, Beth, and maybe I'll play off of that. One's kind of a funny story, but when I was interning, I'm a big believer in internships, and I had an internship with a woman named Congresswoman Louise Slaughter. She was from New York, and I had a successful internship, and she did the obligatory photo op and said, "Okay, what are you going to do with your life?" And I said, and I still to this day look back at this moment because it truly was a crossroads. I said, well, I'm going to move to Buffalo, New York. And my hunky hockey player, he's going to be a professional hockey player. And I guess I'll just have lots of kids. And she looked at me and she said, oh, no, don't you dare. Put yourself on a different path. You love politics. You love activism. You love to speak up for what you believe in. And I think for me, that was a crossroads where somebody was looking from afar. This is quite often, I think, a pattern with women and saying, you've got a different path. I'm going to help you take it. But the point that I want to make before maybe we pivot to Ruth Ann or Swati is I was so excited to be on this panel because all of the women on this panel have a set of experiences prior to entering the legislature. And Beth referenced this. That background, whether it be in education or it be in supporting women or it be in nonprofit, all of those things I believe, make you a better and stronger elected official because you're bringing that to the table. So for those of you that are feeling some pressure around running right away, I would say, look, you do it in your own time and let the experiences allow you to be a stronger legislator in some form, should you choose to run for office.
Awesome. I wanted to introduce Ruth Ann Gaines to the panel. There's some technical difficulties, so sorry about that. But if you just want to give an introduction about your position, and then also, did you always want to go into politics, or when did you realize this was a passion?
Thank you. I've been sitting here enjoying the panel and really wanting to get involved. I don't know what the technical problems were, but I am here. And of course, I'm not James Simons. We could not use my account, so we had to use my clerk's account. But briefly, I was a drama teacher in the Des Moines community for several years and recruited by Don's List to run for the Senate way back in 1994. I lost that election, and 10 years later, I was recruited to run for city council. I lost that election and had given up on politics when Wayne Ford asked me if I would run for his seat in the Iowa House of Representatives in 2010. I won that election and I've been there for now 11 years. This is my 6th term. And I see that people saw leadership skills in me that I wasn't really aware of that I had myself. So I am enjoying being in the legislature, and I guess I'm an educator, but my biggest passion is government oversight, which I'm the ranking member of. Was there another part to the question?
Thank you for joining us. So, yeah.
Yes, we're all good. Thank you so much.
I'm glad to be here.
Yes, thank you. So I'm going to continue the question, did I want to be in politics? No, I wanted to be, I had made a deal, remember, like I said, when I decided to stay home to raise my 2 boys, I had made a deal with my husband that when they go to college, I'll go to University of Iowa and get my PhD in my chemistry. And also, or maybe I would become a chef because I love to cook. Jackie knows that I love to cook. And so he said okay to both. I wanted to go to France and become a chef, either of those two. But in between, I ended up on Linn-Mar School Board, and that's because of my passion. Linn-Mar School District and their board was not focusing on students and the teachers. They were focusing on whatever the administration wanted to do. And I was a little bit upset, and I decided that I was going to challenge the school board members. And I called my friends and said, I'm going to challenge the school board members. And they just looked at me and they said, okay, Swati, if that's what you want to do, we'll show up as your friends to support you, but you will be doing all the talking. And I said, okay. And I, like Beth and Jackie, remember, this was my first time I was going in front of the school board, and my friends decided to call their friends. So the first time when I talked to school board, there were about 150 people supporting me to talk about my passion. And to make the long story short, I talked about the issues, and after a few board meetings, the president of the school board said, if you think you know so much about education, Swati, you should run for school board. And I was really upset that day. So I said, sure, that's what I'll do. And everybody clapped. And I looked at my husband and said, what did I do? And he said, you just announced your candidacy for school board. And that's how my career started. And I thought, okay, I'll be on school board for a few years, and then I'll go back to my PhD or my being a chef. So that was like I thought it was a sidetrack. But then Dick Myers of Iowa City, and my good mentor, called me and said, this is a district where people respect you. We have I think before I won that district for 30 or 40 years, it was a Republican district, and he asked me to run. And as luck would have it, I did work hard with all the guidance from Dick Myers and then Governor Vilsack, I won that race.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Those stories are really inspiring and so cool. Our next question is going to be, what kind of struggles have you experienced as a woman in your role? And do you feel like you are treated equally in your roles?
I'm going to be really curious to hear from our legislators. I will say that I was always the lone girl on the boys soccer team. And I often have to stop and thank a lot of the people who fought for me to have more equity and equality in the workplace. I will say that there are certain areas where, as a leader, I have struggled. So in politics, I had the mentorship and leadership of some very progressive, forward-minded men. And that makes a difference because when they recognize you and your value, you don't have struggles. I think I actually faced more struggles probably in the nonprofit arena, specifically in some of the areas around running a business and financial management. And look, I think one of the things for me as a female leader is I think all of us would say is we have to work extra hard. And I don't like to lose. I don't like to fail. And I always want to look 200%. And so I'm always walking in very aware of any, I don't want to say deficiencies. I want to say areas of growth. For me as a leader, that's probably around financial management and business management. So you better bet I've studied everything before I walk in, but I feel like there are areas for me in the nonprofit leadership role, at least around business management, financial management, that sometimes tend to have a lot of mansplaining coming into my world. So that's just a struggle that I would say personally that I sometimes face.
Yeah, am I unmuted? Well, I would just like to speak up and say that I have always had difficulty distinguishing in why I was not being included at the table. Being an African-American woman, race plays a major part in any type of isolation that I receive from my counterparts. So I'm always struggling to figure out what it is. Is it because I'm Black, or is it because I'm a woman, or is it because I'm both? I finally decided not to worry about what the reason is, but just to be alert to the fact that I am not to be included. I'm not being included, and then to use the strategies that I've learned to be included. I feel that being a legislator, my most difficulty comes in not in gender or in race, but in party. And that's what I have struggled with over the last 11 years. I have been in the minority ever since I was elected, and I have had at some points grave difficulty in getting the men who are of the other party to listen to what I felt was important for the people of Iowa.
To what Ruth said is true, Ruth. I also have faced those issues. I always said it's double minority. Sometimes you have to face issues because you're a woman, and then of course you're a woman of color. And I agree with Jackie. You have to bet 100% almost all the time to prove that you are capable of doing what you are given. When they give you a job, you have to prove time and time again that you are capable of it. And it started and Jackie knows this, when I first ran for my political office. Like I said before, it was a Republican district, and my Republican opponent that time also was a woman. And when she found out that I was ahead in polls, the first thing she reminded my district that my culture is different. I was not born and brought up in Iowa. And all of a sudden, a small district, then District 36 campaign became not only national, but international campaign, because she questioned my ethnicity and my race background. And I have to say, the progressive like Dick Myers and Mike Gronstall, Patty Judge, they were holding my hand and telling me what to do. And we are here today to be your mentor someday. So if you need anything someday, we truly want you to call us, because I would call Dick Myers and I would call Patty Judge, and they would tell me to do what I was doing, and that is knock on the door and do what I was doing. Also, when I was elected, and I had, as a legislator, Ruth Ann, when Dick Meyer would give a particular thing for me to do, some of the men would go and ask him, does she really deserve it? And some of those things were science related, and he used to remind them, she's the only scientist we have here. And it's unique. And I used to tell my boys that when you meet a young woman who is brilliant like you, or maybe even better than you, please make sure that you respect her. You make sure that you even don't try to be funny and say something that is not, in my view, is not appropriate. So it's important that you take care of, to us, we are here today because we think it's important for us to be there for you, and you don't have to face the same problems we did. Thank you.
So I had an incredible mentor. Johnny Hammond is represented Ames and Story County for many years. She was in the Iowa House and the Iowa Senate both. And she was retired before I came in, but she was one of the women who recruited me and still calls me to ask. And I still seek her advice because she has so much experience. But she really paved the way in many ways. She and her generation paved the way in many ways for women like me who probably didn't have as many problems getting elected. When she ran, she tells the story of how her opponent would say, remember that Johnny is a woman, since she has, for us Northerners, if she was a Southerner, a very male-dominated name. Today, and also I would say in my first few years, we had some leadership who would like to slam their fist on the table like what I imagine men have done in the past and say, you will follow me, and threaten us with, you have to follow us on this, you'll vote this way. And I thought, wow, this is really not how women respond to leadership, so maybe you should try something else. And since then, we have had I've experienced different kinds of leaders. One thing that's interesting to note, and Ruth Ann and I are both a part of this, our caucus, the Democratic caucus, has 21 women and 20 men. So we're in the majority of our caucus. The Republican caucus, and this is just a rough count, 10 women and 49 men. So we definitely have some influence in our own caucus, and I think that's really important. It's not much, as a matter of fact, sometimes I think we want more women to run. They tend to have a better chance of winning in many of our districts. So, you know, what we once had as a struggle overcoming being a woman, now in a lot of districts, we want a woman to run. So things change in a good way.
Thank you so much for that. We're going to move on to our next question. That is going to be, what do you see as barriers to women entering leadership positions now?
Well, I definitely, go ahead.
No, Ruth Ann, you go ahead.
All right. I definitely see parenting and balancing that position as a major and still a major issue confronting women who are considering running for office. Until we can get free daycare for people who have younger kids, or assistance with families for people who are taking care of elders, women are still going to be challenged when considering office, because it is a full-time, as you know, job 24/7. And unfortunately, in many of our families, women are still the caregivers, and they don't have anyone particularly that they can rely on. And we don't have enough assistance, state assistance, for a lot of people to be able to get the kind of care that they need for children or for their elders in order to be able to run. This was a major issue in 1994 when I first ran for the Senate, and it remains a major issue today. I think that women who are free have a lot more opportunities to run for office. And in a lot of cases, we lose out on women who would be very, very good in public office, but they can't because they have other responsibilities. And men do not face that challenge.
I would reiterate 100% what Ruth Ann just said. You know, I started when my son was in first grade, my daughter was in sixth grade. I lived close enough to the Capitol, 45 minutes away, that I could get home most nights if the weather was good. You know, there was some events where I didn't get home. You know, my children are now obviously adults. And so but the responsibility, you know, most of the home and parenting responsibility still tends to be on a woman. And whether we want that or not, it still tends to be that way. If you look at research, I think most will say that women do about 85% of that kind of work. So it will continue to be a challenge until we find some way to make that assistance. I think childcare is a great one. Taking care of the elderly and the disabled is also one that we need to help out most women with on the other end of life. And so there are lots of things that we can do, but also we probably need to continue to work with our partners on some more equality with home responsibilities.
So I'm going to take a little different approach. What I would really like to do, and I used to talk to Anna's dad about this all the time, Representative Donovan Olson, who used to sit behind me when I was a legislator in the House, and he used to make some funny comments when I was floor manager. So Anna, you can tell him that was not a good thing to do. So, but I really feel, and all of you can kind of maybe veto me when I say, I really feel that we who have been in politics, we need to encourage the younger women to jump and do what is required, because if we are there in numbers, then people will understand. If there are more women in legislators, that people will understand the issues we face, and it will be easy to pass a bill that talks about child care, talks about elderly care. And I agree with both Beth and Ruth Ann that we are nurturers and we have responsibility of our children and other things we do for our family. But I feel that we should be asking more women to think on their own to run for an office, because all of us, if we look at when that question was asked to us, did you have a plan to be in office? We all said no. We all said we were asked by somebody to run for an office. What I really want to do is I want young women to say that someday I'm going to run for office, because you hear men say that, and that includes my two boys. One is an engineer and the other one is a doctor, but they both say that someday they will run for office. But I was surprised when they were sitting in a group of young men and women. All the men said they do plan to, that's on their mind, that they will run for an office. Same way I want women to do exactly the same thing and say, someday, you don't know when that day is, I will run for an office. And when you have that on your agenda someday, when the opportunity arises, it's very easy to say yes, because if we are in numbers, like Beth said and Ruth Ann said, you can control an agenda that helps all of us. Thank you.
I'll add two comments to that. First, for those of you, if you watched the Biden-Harris general election campaign, if you look at the Biden-Harris administration, as somebody who has watched politics unfold nationally for almost decades, it is the most gender and color blind administration or campaign I have ever seen. And that matters for so many reasons. It matters because when you put a woman or a person of color in a position of power, they are going to recruit and pull people up through their pipeline and their network and bring in different faces and different voices, both on a campaign, but also in administration. They also are going to bring that lens to policymaking. And I have never been so proud. When I look at that administration, it is beautiful and it is a long-lasting legacy. That stuff won't ever change because they set the bar so high on expectations. Can they always do better? Sure, but I would just encourage all of the people on this. There's elected official, and then there's also a whole bunch of staff that do the policy making and they set agendas, and there's a whole bunch of people behind elected officials. And when you get women in there and you get different voices in there, it changes the conversation. I want to touch on one thing, and I think it's probably going to be mostly interesting for the panelists because they all know my background, which is always telling other people to run and helping them be successful. And I do think we have to acknowledge that there is still a fear. And look, I love that men are so confident that they're going to run for office. Little announcement here, I'm going to run for Des Moines School Board. And I have to tell you, I'm terrified. I'm scared and I'm afraid. And of all people, I really shouldn't be. But my point is, we do have to figure out, and for me, I'm 50, my kids are teenagers. I finally got a work-life balance that works for me. And I finally figured out my heart is public education. And I don't want to travel all across the state. I want to be close to my kiddos. And so the reason I'm sharing all of that is it takes time. So know that you want to run, know that you're probably going to be scared because you're putting your name on the ballot, but that's okay. I'm scared too, but I'm doing it because I just said it out loud and I've told a few other people. And then, from there, but it may take 20 years, it may take 30 years, it may take 40 years, but just you'll find it as you go through life and figure out what works best for you. So,
thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I held a UROC or a Human Sciences Senator position, and I had someone approach me, the president. His name's Austin Graber. So hearing that happened to y'all as well is interesting. But yeah, that's so cool. The next question is going to be, what other systematic issues when running did you face, as in just when you're running? Yeah.
Well, I can go first. I can go first today now on this issue. It's not easy to run as a woman and run as a woman of color. When I was, and first I'll give you a small story and then talk about the other two issues I think are equally important. When I was running and knocking on doors, I went to door to door, and there was a gentleman. I knocked on his door and I said, I'm Swati Dandekar, and I'm running for Iowa House District 36. He looked at me and he said, I don't vote for a woman. He flatly told me that on my face. And I said, well, I was very kind to him. I said, thank you very much. But do you know my opponent is also a woman? And he said, well, then he said, young lady, then I'm going to skip your race. That's what he told me. So I was very sheepish about it. But the next time around, I still decided to go and knock on his door. And he said, come in. He called his wife and said, our state representative is here. I had not realized that it was his wife who was having some issues that time on Medicaid, and she had called me, and I really went and helped her and did everything, and then even called her to make sure that she was okay, and I followed up on them. I didn't see because I didn't know who they were, and so he said sorry to me that he did that, and I said, "Oh, that's okay. This time, I hope you will vote for me." And he said, "Every time you run," he said, "I am going to vote for you." So that's the best part. And so fear, of course, is there. And Jackie, you may have same kind of issues, but that's okay. I know you work very hard, and so you will have no problem winning those people who don't vote for you. So the second one is, first, we are so worried that whether we'll be all right, whether we'll give our 100%, though I know most of us give more than 100%, but we are always worried, will we be able to balance our act? And we do. And the third one is, women have trouble raising money because we are so used to taking care of others, giving more of giving than asking. And when you run for an office, you have to pick up a phone and say, "Hello, Jackie, this is Swati, will you give me?" Usually women always ask for less money than more. I have seen how men ask for money. Ruth Ann and Beth will agree to that. And that's a challenge, but it's okay. It's okay. We do need to make sure that we are doing what's right. We are doing this. Let me go back. We are asking for money because we do want to take care of our citizens. And there's nothing wrong, because that's what men think. So really, when it comes to taking care of people, women are nurturers, so we should be doing that. Those are my points, and I will let others take it over from here.
Well, I think that, first of all, I ditto fundraising and having the courage to ask for money and to approach people. I found that a big issue in campaigning initially. But another issue that I have found to be challenging is building the right campaign, which means getting the right people to support you. In my first two elections in which I was defeated, part of the issue was that I had people within the campaign who were feuding against each other. And because of that, they weren't able to give my campaign the attention that it needed. It's very important to recruit people who are there for the right reasons. And of course, that right reason is getting you elected. There will be some people who are there because they want to get their little fame in, or they want you to pull them up by their bootstraps, or for many, many reasons of their own. And those are not the right people to work for you and to support you. I think you have to be very selective in the people that you pull close to you in a campaign and the people that you send out to represent you in a campaign. That makes a lot of difference. And I had to learn all of that the hard way in all the campaigns that I have been involved in. It's very important to connect with the right people and then to get those people to support you and represent you while you're running.
So, I mean, I can give an example of door knocking once, and this was my very first campaign. It was a primary. And I knocked on a neighbor's door. I didn't know her very well. She only lived about a block away. And her response was, "Do you have enough time to do this?" Now, she was referring to the fact that I had 2 young children, and my husband's job has always been, he works for the athletic department, so he works games. So he's quite frequently gone either locally or away on games. And it was funny that I had to defend myself and say, I have my parents can take care of my children also, besides the two of us, and they are very willing. My children already go over there all the time. They only live a block, about a mile away. But having to defend myself there, that hasn't happened in a long time though. I think running with young children is not as unusual as it used to be, but it was at that time, and so I'm very thankful for that. And Jackie, you go. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jackie.
It'll
You
be
go
fun.
also. Yeah,
I
Go
will say, I think it's very hard for, and this is for men and women in this day and age, their whole life is available to everybody. And even the personal is public. And I would just say that is that's a big challenge for I think for people to just know and think about. You're really putting yourself as a public official. You are available. Sometimes people feel they own you because it's taxpayer dollars. They can kind of take it as in a weird way really far. But my point is that it's something that you should be aware of and focus on when you are running, and also not be afraid to set boundaries about who you are and when you are an elected official and when you are a person trying to be present with your family, friends, and community. But they blend a lot.
Awesome, folks. Thank you so much. I have one more question, then we're going to move on to the Q&A. But of all the challenges we face today, what do you think are the top 3 that we need to start addressing?
I'm going to go first because Ruth Ann set this up: affordable, high quality childcare. And I'm just going to list one because I think it's that important.
Okay, I did find 3. First of all, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and it's so hard for us to do nearly anything without addressing the crisis that we have found ourselves in now for an entire year. This is the 1-year anniversary of the first case found in the state of Iowa. So I can never say anything. Also, and this encompasses a whole bunch of issues, but I think racial and economic injustice. And economic injustice would include childcare. I mean, there's so many things we can do to fix the economic injustice and the racial injustice. So those are absolutes that we should be addressing right now. And global climate change would be my 3rd one, and it should be really high at the top of the list. But we need to leave this world in a better shape than it is heading right now for the young people who are graduating from college now, all of our young people. And I'm just embarrassed by what we are doing to this earth, and we absolutely need to address that issue. So thanks.
And I'm going to say one, so Ruth Ann can talk about her issues. I agree with what Beth and Jackie said, but I will say that women equality is still a big issue. Even today, I was talking to Arvind last night on this question, and I had pandemic and other issues also in front of, I had written those down, but the reason I stayed home, nothing, if I have to do it over again, I will do exactly the same thing, was because I was, as a woman scientist who had same kind of degree like my husband, but my pay was so low. That has not changed yet. And it should not be even discussed in this day and age. So that's one I'm going to talk about, women equality, because that's my big passion. And then I'm going to ask Ruth Ann to discuss the others. Thanks.
Well, I have one major one that I think encompasses everything that you all have mentioned, and that's criminal justice reform. you know, the disparity within our own state, and it is a national disparity. And it includes so many other issues: economic disparity, educational disparity, gender disparity. I mean, it just runs the gamut. But we need to be a lot more fair and equitable in our penalties for certain crimes, the injustice that comes with the haves and the have-nots in terms of who has lawyers that can get them off and who doesn't. Everything in the criminal justice system needs to be reformed. A lot of people are spending a lot of time behind bars and they didn't even commit the crime. And it's because they didn't have the ability to be defended. It's horrible. It's one of the biggest crimes of our nation, I believe, and we need to really work on that.
Thank you so much. I wrote those all down, and they're such awesome topics. So thank you so much for bringing those to light. And then now we're turning to a Q&A, so our audience will be able to ask questions. I do have one from where is it? Awesome. From Anna Olson, actually. So Jackie, you mentioned that you don't like to fail, and how hard is it to face failure, especially in light of being a woman? And how do you continue to take on leadership positions and make an impact despite potential failure? Sorry, reading is hard today.
Yeah, no, it's look, when, and it's funny because I've worked through this. I don't know if it's the therapy that worked me through it, but when I was serving as Michelle Obama's White House Chief of Staff, my husband John was the Chief of Staff at USDA. So we were both in Washington jobs. Our kids were, I don't know, 5 and younger. And I have to be honest, I really struggled. I struggled in that. I struggled to balance work and family in a way that was authentic to me. I didn't feel like I was doing anything well. I think my job was suffering. I think my family life was suffering. And so what do? You what do most women do? We talk about our feelings, right? And we accept where we are, and where we are in that year may be different than where we'll be in 2 or 3 years. At the time, when I made the decision to say this wasn't a good fit for me, for my family, for Mrs. Obama, it just wasn't working. Did I feel like a failure? Oh yeah, of course I did, because I don't fail. Do you work yourself through it and reflect and pick yourself back up? Yep, you do. Look, I think that's also just part of my personality, but what you have to remember is failure is only bad if you don't reflect on it, if you don't look at it and say, where were my struggles? I knew where my struggles were, but it wasn't even so much a struggle as much as it was a set of priorities that I had determined for myself that I couldn't adhere to. So it took me a while to get comfortable with that. But I would just say, again, Jean Case and of the Case Foundation, she talked a lot about failing forward, failing fast. The lesson in failure is reflect and move on. And I've done that plenty of times. And my guess is a lot of people on this group have as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This is a question for everybody. There are many powerful women involved in this panel that seem to uplift one another. Do you think that women supporting women is a reality amongst politicians, or do you think there is some room for improvement?
There's always room for improvement. Sometimes I feel that I have seen how men, and I'm going to talk about men legislators, how they support each other. Sometimes we don't, and I know why we don't sometimes, because we are so many other things we are responsible for. We have our family, we have other things we do, and it is so important for us to hold each other's hands. Doesn't matter. Even you can say to our friends that it's okay to be a failure. It's okay what happened. If you need me, call me or let's talk or have a coffee. There's always room for improvement. We are getting better than what I had heard about a few years back, but we should really stick to each other, because when we hold each other's hands, we become powerful. And to me, that should be one of our goals.
I have always been supported by women. My entire life has been built on women holding me up. I attended parochial school, so for about 8 years, I attended all girls high school and then an all girls college. And so I knew what it meant to be involved in a network of women. And when I started my professional career, I always sought out women's groups whom I knew would support me. I was first recruited by Dawn's List, which is a group of women. And at that time, Barbara Boatwright, Joanne Zimmerman, and Willie Glanton were leading the pack. And so they were three of my strongest supporters. There were other women's groups, and I am still strongly supported by the women in the legislature. I feel we have a great body of women working not only to help the people of Iowa, but to support each other and to continue to recruit women to run for office. And so, as Swati said, we can always improve, but I would not have been successful had I not had women as my mentors.
So I have had great women mentors, but I've been there now for 17 years. This is my 17th year. And I think it's really important that I've noticed in the past, I don't know how many years, to make sure that I am a good mentor. And we had a whole slew of new young women who came into the legislature 2 years ago. And on the committee that I am ranking member of, 5 of them were on my committee. And it was really so much fun to be able to work with them, to see their ups and downs. Your first year as a legislator can be really defeating in the minority in particular, but when you think you've got a bill and you think it's going to be good, and then all of a sudden you find out in caucus going into committee that they've just gutted it and nothing that you thought was going to happen, and so there are, the disappointment and trying to make sure that we don't lose our enthusiasm for what we're doing is hard. And so I have really taken upon myself to try and make sure that to mentor and to be there, because I'm really past the stage of needing a mentor, probably.
All right, awesome.
I just have to add one thing. When I was first elected in 2010, and so my first legislative session was in 2011, Beth Wessel Chriselle was my mentor. And she probably thought that there was no hope for me. But now she stands and tells me that she is very, very proud of my accomplishments. She had a conversation with me about 3 weeks ago in which she applauded me for the things that I have been able to achieve since those dark days when I didn't know what I was doing. So I want to publicly thank you, Beth. Thank you so much for being an excellent mentor for me. And I love you for that.
I think we all had good female or women mentors. Mine was Patty Judge, Ruth Ann, and Andy McGuire, my friend. So I think you always have good friends like Patty Judge and Andy McGuire who are there for you when you need them.
Well, I know we need to wrap up, but Donovan Olson asked a great question. And I don't know if Beth or Ruth Ann, if you just want to say something quick about it. Eliana, sorry, but it's such a great question about the gender, the female being in the majority.
Yeah, so essentially this question is for Ruth Ann or Beth. Was the Iowa House of Representatives different when it was led by a female versus a male?
You can go first, my mentor. I'd say no. I'd say again, it's all been along party lines. And the Republicans have been in the majority, and with some of the legislation that they have presented and it subsequently has passed, I see no difference. Definitely, no, it's the same.
Yeah. And I need to sing Ruth Ann's praises also. She's been so great to work with and brings something different to the table every single day. So we just couldn't do it without Ruth Ann, and I really appreciate her being there. But was it different? No.
What about in your own caucus? What about in your own caucus? Is it different in your own caucus?
So we have not, in my caucus, had a woman be the minority leader, have we? No, not since I've been there. But we do have assistant minority leaders. We have the whip. And so I can't remember the titles of our minority leadership, but I am seeing a lot of them rise to the occasion. And I do really feel that it won't be long before we do have in our own caucus a woman who is taking over what I hope to be the majority leader soon and the speaker soon. I think we probably won't be holding both of those positions as women. And I do believe that it is different. But the fact that my caucus is over 50% women makes that very different. I mean, it's just like, of course, we are going to have this kind of leadership, and we are respected just because we are 21 of the 41. So it makes a difference. You can't lead without us, because there are enough of us to vote you down.
I don't know what the future holds, but I remember when I was first elected, there was talk of a women's caucus, and leadership did not want that male leadership. So we didn't get it. There was also talk of a Black legislative caucus when I first got there. Leadership didn't want that either. But with changes in time, a couple of years ago, we formed the Black Legislative Caucus. So I wouldn't be surprised that we might have, if necessary, a women's caucus in the future.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all the people who are watching. We have a week full of events. We have Gloria Allred speaking tonight. We have the Republican panel at 2 p.m. So if you want to check that out, you can go on the student government website. And then also there's a link of everything that's happening this week. I appreciate all of you, and thank you so much. And have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having us.
For inviting us. Thank